So, hello and welcome to episode 1 of In Service to Transformation. I am so excited to be here right now. I feel a lot of energy moving through my system. I feel all of the things. And part of the reason I'm deeply excited is because I share this space with my teacher, my mentor. I feel emotional as I say this. Melody Lubin, who is an exquisite, a profoundly beautiful human and a wonderful being of light, teaching, and spirituality that walks this earth amongst us. And uh, as I've shared before, when I got the download to do this podcast, I just emerged from a week-long initiation and portal under her guidance and her leadership and her holding space for us. And I just received this message of, you are going to record this podcast in service to transformation. This is the thing. And it was 4 or 5 in the morning, and I was like sat bolt upright in my bed, and I just knew, like, this is a code and you're going to follow it. And I couldn't think of anyone better to have as my inaugural, my first guest than Melody, having supported me in reaching that space of knowing, or should I say knowing. And so, yeah, it gives me, the greatest of pleasure to welcome Melody Lubin to the space. And we're going to talk about her personal journey to finding transformation. Melody's going to share a little bit more about how transformation looked for her, and ultimately how she's transformed and transmuted her journey, her pain, her learnings into being of service to others. And I just know it's going to be wonderful. So, hello,
Hello.
Melody.
Thank you so much for having me. Honored to be
Oh,
the first guest.
such a privilege. It always is to have you and speak to you anyway. But yeah, I'm so
Mm.
grateful to have you here. Thank you for your yes.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. So I would love if you would maybe just open up by telling, I could, no one can describe better what you do than you. So would you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do? And then maybe we can look a bit more about your journey to becoming who you are.
Yeah, so my name's Melody, and I guess what I do is I work in the realms of the feminine mysteries. I work in the realms of feminine energy, the current of the feminine, erotic aliveness, taking us into the spiritual realm. And I guess that's really kind of the foundations of my work. It's so funny when people ask me this question, they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, I just do my thing. But it's so intangible. Like, Claire's been in this field for a while, and it's such an intangible thing. And it's like, how do you explain it through words? But that's kind of what I do. I work in the realms of the feminine. And when I speak to the feminine, I'm not talking about woman. I'm talking about feminine energy, the current that lives inside everyone on this planet, and then also the current that lives outside of us and through us. And that's really what my work is about connecting and harnessing our relationship with that energy so that we can show up as that in the world.
Mm.
So yeah, it's kind of deeply transformational, which is great because that's what we're going to be talking about today. It's deeply transformational, it's deeply activational, it's profound, life-changing, and it also just kind of is. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. I absolutely loved how you touched on the piece about the feminine that lives in all of us. Could you elaborate a little bit more about that just before we continue? Because I know we're going to have listeners who are male and female and non-binary and all of the other gender definitions.
Yeah, totally. So for me, the feminine is, I see the feminine as the soma, because the soma is experiential, and the soma is the body. For those that haven't heard that term before, the soma is the somatic, so it's the body.
Mm.
And what I experience in the body is experience. And that's what the feminine is. It's experience, it's our feeling, it's creation, it's expression. And that lives in male, female, non-binary, however you identify it. It's like, it's a current that is outside of us and inside of us, because it's also the expression of the universe. Does
Mm.
that make sense? Like it's not,
Yes.
um, it comes through our vessels, but it's not us.
Mm.
So the feminine to me is my emotional body, my ability to feel, my ability to express, my ability to create, but creation isn't me, it's outside of me. So
Mm.
that's how I experience the feminine, and that's why it's every single person has access to the feminine, like every single person has access to the masculine. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Ooh, great. And I want to dive back into that a little bit later if I can. So
Yes.
I'm really curious, and what I would love is for the listeners to be able to understand a little bit more about your journey and how, what's your story and what led you to wanting to find transformation and whether you're even conscious of that at the time.
Yeah, I have a really pivotal point in my journey that kind of was like a change of tracks moment.
Mm.
And I guess we all have a story with multiple threads that lead up to where we are, right? But
Yeah.
I've always had physical body issues. So I've always had, I don't have them anymore, but when I was a late teens, I had physical stuff. And for me, physical issues is a manifestation of some kind of energetic that comes from some kind of emotional blockage. So I was always kind of getting these cues. I had chronic IBS, all of that kind of stuff. And there's a pivotal moment in my journey where I'd just broken up with a long-term boyfriend. I was about 23. I'd just broken up with a long-term boyfriend. I was partying really heavily. I was having sex with lots of boys. And that was like an 8-month period. And there was kind of this moment, and I was actually at a friend's house, and we'd been up all night doing cocaine. And I had this like sobriety of, we've been having this conversation for the last 3 weeks. Every week for the last 3 weeks, we have been having this same conversation. And I just had this like, it like came through me of, surely there's more to life than this. And literally
Mm.
the next day was like, I'm not drinking, I'm not doing drugs, I'm cutting all these ties with all these men. And that was like the beginning of my
Wow.
cross the tracks moment, where I really just like put the brakes on a train that was going one way. And I was
Mm.
like, no, I'm done. Change tracks. And haven't been sober. Like that wasn't like me just
Yeah.
going completely sober, but I did go sober for a very long time after that. And I started exploring. I've always been a big traveler. And I remember going to Colombia in 2016 and just having this huge, 2015, having this huge awakening with Mother Nature. Like
Mm.
I was just watching the sunset one night, totally sober. I was in my sobriety period. And I was just communing with the mother.
Yeah.
And then I started having Reiki healing, and I started having to heal all my daddy stuff. And that was like the beginning of my journey.
Yum. Can I touch on a couple of those points that you
Most
raised?
definitely.
I just love that moment of consciousness that you speak of, almost that spiritual awakening when you had that clarity drop in, almost again from without, that said
Yes.
there has to be more to life than this, that gift, and that you were able to grasp, to hold that thread and to follow it through. As you know, I've been sober, clean for nearly 13 years. Same thing. I think it's so fascinating, actually, that many of us can come into a journey of healing through this degradation that we might find, these periods of our lives where we are in overload, where we're in addiction patterns. And I find it really fascinating that out of that can be born such a spiritual enlightenment. And what I've come to, and I don't know if you would share this opinion, but for me, it was I was trying to transcend the whole time I was getting high. I was like I was trying to attain this spirituality, this connection with a higher connective being, God, effectively. Let's call it God for the sake of clarity, the universe. And actually, the irony being that when I stopped using drugs, that's when the connection could come online. I don't know if you identify with that at all.
Well, totally. I think it's that like very typical, like you're seeking outside of yourself
Hmm.
thing, and you have to cut off everything that's outside to actually come back and realize that it was here all along.
All
Because
along.
God is here, God is outside, God is inside, God is everywhere. And
Hmm.
that's what's it's I'm sure that 98% of the people that you speak to specifically on this podcast with the questions that you're asking them will have that, right? It's like that seeking outside,
Yeah.
and then we realize it isn't out there, it's in here. And
Yeah.
that's what the journey is.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that literally finding it within. And then I really loved the piece that you spoke about communing with mother. So for some listeners, that they may think literally that means with their mother. So could you explain a bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah. Communing with the mother. So the mother being Mother Earth. And
Mm.
again, this access to feminine energy, but I almost see the mother with like a bit more density, like it's
Mm.
more tangible than feminine energy, for example. And so
Yeah.
when I use the word the mother, I am literally talking about Mother Gaia, like our earth, the grass, the trees, the sunset, the ocean, nature. And I was in Colombia on this tiny island, and I was watching the sunset, and the clouds were literally talking to me. And I was like,
Mm.
what the hell is happening here? She is literally saying something to me. And it
Oh,
was just, yeah, it was magical.
and that's clean, right? That's like straight, right? Not high.
Totally.
These things
Not
don't
at
even happen when you're
all.
high. That's so
No.
crazy. It really reminds me. I was a prolific Ibiza visitor, and I
Yes.
loved getting off my tits on MDMA and all of the highs. And I went to Ibiza, I think less than a year clean. It was a risk, because and I went with my daughter to visit friends, and I had such a spiritual awakening out there. And it was such a moment in my own journey of transformation around the sunsets. It was the sunsets that spoke to me. And there was this moment. So a couple of things happened where my partner was there with me, my daughter's father, and he was kind of done. He was ready to go home. We'd had this beautiful holiday, beach combing and doing all the things. And he was like, I'm ready to go home now. There's no Wi-Fi. I just want to be at home with my creature comforts. And for the first time, I was just like, we're going to stay. Me and my child, she was really diddy at the time. And I think she was probably about 6. And I said, oh, I think we're going to stay for another week. So I solo holidayed with
Mm.
Lois, my daughter. And the two of us, we just traveled around Ibiza in the car, just her and I, chasing sunsets, going to a different location each night to watch the sunset. And
Mm.
it was beautiful. And it was such a moment of awakening. And I think it just shows you that you can have a life where you're leaving yourself and trying to find the things outside of yourself, and using drugs and having addictions and thinking that you're never going to find the thing. And then when you stop, you see the thing, you chase the thing, and you allow yourself to be the thing. And
Totally.
yeah, I just totally took that. So yeah, thank you so much.
And you almost can't have it until you stop all the distraction, because
Mm,
the distraction being drinking, smoking, taking drugs, having sex, like whatever your distraction might be, you're never going to find the connection in that. It's like that all has to go for you to be able to get the communication that you're seeking.
mm, absolutely.
Mm.
So then you have the awakening, you're there, you're like, okay, this is the thing, I'm ready. So what happened next?
So I'm like having all this Reiki healing. I'm going to all the kirtans. I'm doing all of the yoga. I'm a fitness instructor at the time. And I'm like going to all of these things, ecstatic dances, and I'm like really wanting it. And I'm
Mm,
feeling like an outsider. I'm like, oh, this just feels like, I don't know if anybody that's listening, there's like a particular kind of stereotype of what it means to be spiritual. And I am just definitely not that thing. Never
mm,
have been, never will be. I would go to these events and I'd be wearing like bright yellow trousers and my leopard print, and everyone would be in, like earthy tones. And I'm like,
mm.
oh, I don't know, I just feel like such an outsider here. I was teaching fitness classes at the time, like really hammering my body, and I was on the verge of burnout. And I was going to Reiki healing lots of like old stuff. It was so powerful for me. I thought it was such a necessary gateway for me to get into this work, really allowed me to start opening. Like I hadn't cried for about 2.5 years. And I
Wow.
got on that Reiki bed for the first session and just like all this grief just opened. So
Mm.
I went on that journey for a long time. I did it for about a year and a half. And then anyway, I was scrolling on Instagram one day, and my friend Tanya had just posted this training that she was going to.
Hmm.
And it was the training of a feminine mystery school. And that was like the opening. What the feminine mystery school was kind of this erotic teacher training. And I just had this visceral pull in my body of like, this is mine. It was like I had to do it. It was non-negotiable. And so rewind like 9 months before I went on that, I went on a trip to Mexico, and I started I started connecting with my womb. I went to some yoni egg healing workshops. I found ISTA, and they were doing some introductory workshops. ISTA is it's the International School of Temple Arts, and they
Mm.
were running some introduction workshops, and I went to those. And that was kind of like the door opening to this
Mm.
feminine thing that I didn't know anything about. Then I
Mm.
saw this training, and that was that. And here I am,
Amazing. Well, and so it is. I
six
really
years later.
understand that pull as well from this particular medicine that we both love and embody
Yes.
and carry. And
Yes.
it's almost like tentacles. My experience was it was like this entity was there, and I was being pulled into her vortex, and I now know that to be the feminine, was like, you need this, and it was pulling me in, and then once I engaged with the desire, the fantasy, the erotic pull of it, it was and it pulled me into its arms. And I really understand that deep knowing that, oh, I've been through all of these things, I've been having all of these healings. I used to think I'll be a yoga teacher. And then I'd almost sign up for the training. And then I'd be like, this is not the thing. And I'd sort of pull out. And the shadow side of that being, oh, I'm a failure. I never do anything. I can never find the thing. And then finding the thing and doing the thing. So what happened next? You went on the training, and I'd love to know what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, so it was a 7-day feminine mystery training, and if you've ever been on one, the one that I went on for sure was pretty intense. It's kind of like a boiling pot, essentially, for 7 days of just activation and really deep exploration of your expression and your physical body and your emotional body, and it's really stretching you, and it's like going into an oven essentially is kind of what it feels like. You feel like you're in a pressure cooker. But it really opens a lot of layers. Like,
Mm.
yeah, it stretches your capacity, and just the amount of healing that takes place is like you do walk in one person and leave another. And that's kind of what
Mm.
it was for me. And I kind of knew when I was going, I'd wanted to be a life coach. Like I'd done a life coaching certification, like all of those things. And I knew that I wanted to coach, and I had no idea what my journey was going to look like and what it was going to be like for me to get there. And
Yeah.
then the last 6 years was that. So I started training with the teacher that was running the Feminine Mystery School. I trained with her for a year and a half while continuing to journey her work. And then I became a facilitator for that particular movement. And yeah, then I closed that contract over a year ago now.
Mm.
And yeah, things kind of moved. Yeah.
Yeah, things kind of moved. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I've journeyed that medicine with you, so I really
Yes.
understand the potency and that containment and that spiral that is created in those 7 days.
Yes.
I think the pieces, I guess I'd love us to sort of touch a little bit more on as well, are some of we create a container almost, like the word container comes to mind, and a spiral of connection with other sisters as well in that space that allows us to really open up and be mirrored too, and meet more of ourselves in that process. So I guess in that journey of initiation that you had, could you share some of your experiences? Would you be willing to go there and share about some of your experiences you had with others and with self?
Yeah, totally. So I think I'll just first off say, like, some of the women that I journeyed with are my closest friends now,
Yeah.
because you just journey to the depths of something that's so indescribable that almost nobody else can understand that hasn't been in that space. And like, I have my peers of who I got to journey with, like Claire, you also have the same, right? And it's like
Yeah.
that connection that you build is really, yeah, it's like pretty otherworldly is what it
Yeah.
is, because it's so raw. So I
Mm,
think some of the big pieces, I mean, over the last 6 years, I've journeyed a lot. I've journeyed a lot with my current teacher, Perry Chase, and
mm,
she's really, I've had radical transformation with her. But
mm.
some of the themes have been things like healing my PCOS,
Wow.
polycystic ovaries, healing my physical ailments that have been with me
Mm,
for a while, daddy stuff that is like kind of ongoing for sure.
mm,
Kind of really re-relating with my own inner child to create safety and support. And a lot of forgiveness work for things that I've held a lot of resentment towards, whether it's previous boyfriends, whether it's my relationship with my parents, money stuff. Money has been a
mm,
huge one that I've healed. Um, so it's moving a lot of kind of like the lower density experiences of scarcity, of abandonment, of fear, of terror. I've moved a lot of terror that's been in my body, locked in
mm,
my body. And the opposite to terror is ecstasy, right? It's like grief.
mm,
It gives you access to your joy, and terror gives you access to your ecstasy.
mm,
And for most of my life, I had a layer of terror kind of just sitting on the front of my body that I've managed to peel back the layers of.
mm,
So I think what people want to understand about transformation is it's like everything that you've never felt in your lifetime is what you're asked to feel. And that is what
mm.
transformation is. Like,
Yeah.
that is literally unlocking all of the gates to all of the things that you want to experience is through the things that you haven't felt.
Mm,
So yeah, the processes that you go through are like, and then also there's been great things like reclaiming my sexuality, really building a deep relationship with my physical body, finding my sexual expression, wanting to be show up in the world as a woman, as a like powerful woman.
mm,
So that's kind of on the other side of what it means to really feel the depths of the trauma that we
yeah,
have.
absolutely.
Yeah.
There's one word that's really stand out for me in everything that you shared there, and it's the word terror. It's such an activating word. And I can interpret it in a way that means something to me, and I don't doubt that I have and sometimes still do operate from a place of feeling that terror. I think a lot of us move through our lives with a level of anxiety and disconnection and fear. Uh, would you allow me to just delve a little bit deeper and ask for a sort of a specific example from you of how terror would show up in your life
Yeah.
and how it would manifest and then what impact it would have on you? I'd really love to hear more.
Yeah, so for me, the terror has always been like a layer that sits underneath protection mechanisms. So
Mm,
I didn't know that the terror was there until my body got to a certain level of opening. And then it's like once my body is open, I can't access it all the time, but when it's ready to come up, it will just come up. And it's like the fear of being alive, essentially. It's like
mm,
I was born into pre-verbal trauma. So literally the moment that I was born was traumatic. And for some people, if they have traumatic births or if they were adopted or if they have like there's something that happens when you're in the birth, when you're in the womb.
in utero, yeah.
Exactly. You can get this kind of terror, but it's
Mm,
essentially for me, how it shows up is like the absolute terror of being alive. and the
Mm.
parts of me that actually do not want to be here. So really young, scared parts of like, this world is fucking terrifying. I don't know how to receive. I don't want to, like, I don't know how to receive love. All of the parts of me that find it hard to be alive, that
Yes.
is the terror that starts to move. And
Mm.
I always get it on the edge of an expansion of where it's like, I'm being asked to receive more love or receive more money or show up for more. And it's this really young,
Mm.
scared part of me that is like, this is a lot. I don't know how.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And so transformation of that, what it's allowed you to access what exactly?
It just like puts you on the other side as an opening, right? It's like that
Mm.
part of you that is so scared, that is gripping so tightly inside of us that we
Yeah.
almost can't even feel because we're so used to that
Used to it.
gripping. We've
Yeah.
been walking around with it for however many years. And it's like that thing that just like slowly, slowly just wants to create a bit of space. And in that tiny bit of space, more can come in, more money,
Mm.
more joy, more ecstasy, more clients, more life. And then you
Mm.
have like, and then that's kind of where it is. And then it will start to open again. And then in that little space is more joy, more ecstasy, more clients,
Mm.
more vibrancy, like whatever it is.
More
But there's
adventure. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly more space.
Yum, 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 yum.
Exactly.
You just make this transformation stuff sound so appealing, right? It's, I think it's definitely through the pain comes the pleasure, and I think that's such a kind of cliche, isn't it? But it's absolutely true. And terror isn't how I would describe it, and my manifestation, because I feel it's unique to every one of us.
Yeah.
I think we all ultimately run on an element of fear, for sure. When you're sharing about that, my terror is of dying. It's not of being alive, it's actually of dying. It's
Mm.
of being left, it's of being abandoned, because there are some incidents that have happened in this lifetime, and I'm sure in many millennia before, in other lifetimes that I still carry wounds from, where I'm so frightened of rejection and abandonment because I might die
Mm.
without care. So I
Yes.
think it's so interesting, isn't it, to I love exploring these topics with others because ultimately we all have our own unique thing behind the fear, but ultimately it's the fear that's driving us and the fear that's creating the shell and the protective
Yes.
mechanism. That underneath that is all of the opening and the vulnerability and the special parts of ourselves that deserve to be set free so that we can really be in our true essence.
Totally. And I do think that fear is slightly different to terror. So
Mm,
from my experience, like terror is so much in the body that you do
wow.
have to have some kind of nervous system capacity. And that's
Yes.
why it took me like 4.5 years to feel my first layer of terror of doing this
Mm,
work every single day because your nervous system can't hold it. Like
mm.
it's so much energy in the body of
Yeah,
that our natural reaction is just to hold it. And we are literally all just holding it.
yeah.
So there is like a slight difference
Nuance,
between
yeah.
fear and terror.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that breakdown. That makes sense. And as you're using the word terror, I can feel a tightness in my chest. I can feel the contraction across my shoulder blades. It's so visceral and bodily,
Yes.
somatic. It's so somatic.
Yes.
Amazing. So tell me a little bit more. I'd love to hear a little bit more about you. You obviously you mentioned you went into facilitating for the Feminine Mystery School. This is obviously how I met you. Tell me a little bit about that journey and how it impacted you individually in your transformation, and then what you started to see in others, perhaps. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah. So I'd always been some kind of facilitator
Mm,
because I taught spin classes and Pilates classes for 6.5 years before I did this work. So
yeah.
when I came into this work, my intention was to teach it. I was like, I feel
Mm,
like that's just my path. I just felt it calling
yeah.
me. And um what's really interesting about facilitating this work is that serving it heals so much for you.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
100%. Yes.
So you go on your own journey of healing, and we're always healing, right? We don't stop healing. So you never get to healed. That's not like the certificate that we get, unfortunately. We're always healing, and there's always layers and there's always stuff. But what really, when you choose to become a facilitator and serve this work, you are essentially asking the medicine to clear everything out of you.
Yeah.
So you basically say, I'm ready to become a vessel to hold this work out in the world. And so
Mm.
you then go on even more healing to
Mm.
open yourself to be able to hold this work.
Mm.
So your purpose heals you in the sense that it has the exact codes of your path that is required for you to be able to translate the work to somebody that has not yet healed or accessed that part, because you are guiding them. Therefore, you have to have gone on that journey.
Absolutely.
So it heals you in the sense of it literally takes you on the path.
Yes. And if we go back to how you initiated this discussion with some things moving through us, ultimately you are a vessel for divinity to move through. Divinity understands what you require, divinity understands what the other requires, and you're just the container, right? Yeah. And I'd love you to speak because you have such a unique way of teaching. You're such an innate teacher. And I wonder, obviously we both follow human design. I know that you're a projector. It's a real projector element, isn't it? To be a teacher, to be a facilitator, to be a mentor. But I'm really curious about how you feel your essence comes through alongside that divinity, because I am happy to offer some reflections, but ultimately, yeah, how does that feel for you? How do you feel yourself alongside being the thing that's being of service and going on that journey?
Do you think you can just reframe the question
Mm.
slightly?
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm curious to know is, so I'll speak from my frame of reference. I think learning to be I've also been in a framework of facilitation for quite some time in one guise or another, whether it be parenting, whether it be in work as a project manager and guiding a huge team through a project, whether it be as a sponsor taking people through a recovery process. And I always find there's this element of, I think at the beginning where you're like, oh, I'm doing the thing, I'm doing the thing. And you're like, oh, I can do the thing, like as we're learning. And then there's this moment where you drop in and you're like, oh, the thing is happening and I'm not doing it. It's just happening. And this is how it's supposed to be. And there's that journey that we're being taken on where there's that reciprocal nature of healing that's occurring in being of service to others. So you can see the profound change that's happening to the other person, and you can feel the profound change that's happening within. And then you can feel yourself. And I'd love to, I don't know if I'm articulating it well, but for me, there's this element of a separation from ego and just almost like a gratitude that comes in that is like, I am so profoundly grateful to be given this opportunity to walk this pathway with this other human that allows me to meet more of myself in this way. So I'm just curious, what does it feel like for you, I guess, to be a facilitator and to be of service for others? Like what comes through for you? Is it gratitude? Is it joy? Is it what is, does that make more sense, that reframe?
Yeah, totally. I'm deeply grateful to do my work, and it's such an honor. It's such a deep honor. And there's also just a part of me that's also just like, this is just what I'm doing. It's
Yeah.
like this very matter of fact as well. There's not like too much thinking about it. It's just like, this is what I'm doing and this is what's being asked of me. So
Yeah.
like, it's very opening. I love it. I love like creating with people. I love making connections. I love serving. And it also just is. There's just like
Mm.
this isness to it that it's just like, yeah, this is just what I do.
Mm.
And I think I've said this many times to you, Claire, but it's like, it never really feels like me.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It just feels like I'm just doing what's being asked of me, but it's not,
Yes.
it's like not ever really
It's not
like
you.
it's
Yeah.
me, but it
Yeah.
isn't, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that kind of, it's what's dropping in for me here is this, it's probably selfish, but hey, it's my podcast, I could be selfish, right? But there's this element, and I know you and I have journeyed it. There's this element of when you're a person who's in a position of guidance, we can receive projections, right? So we can receive projections from others who are resistant to their path or whatever their reason happens to be. Um, and actually, one of the greatest things that you've kind of taught me is how to hold some of those projections. But it's an ongoing journey, and there are layers and layers to this shadow work that we do. But I'm curious because one of the greatest things that I observe about you is your ability to be the thing, right? To just be of service, to just be it. And removing your ego, I think, is the key to not personalizing. But could you tell me a little bit about your journey with being that in that position and receiving projections and how that's what your journey's been around that? Because I think a lot of people who are maybe listening, they're maybe wanting to go on a journey of transformation or become a facilitator, might be frightened of, oh, but what will people think and how will people receive me and how am I going to handle that? And I think there's some medicine in hearing others who have walked that pathway and how how they've coped with those projections.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually just having this conversation with my teacher this week,
Mm,
and she was talking about mastery and um, the reality of moving the way in the circumstance that she was speaking with it with me was she was talking about the reality of like moving past your peers and the
mm,
projections that come with it and the way that we spend time watering our own flower, right? We spend time watering our own plant, and that the reality is that the more mastery you have, the more projections you will have. But actually, if you never get on board with the fact that you have mastery, you will never own the full responsibility of what the mastery is asking of you. So the more like projections aren't comfortable, and also being able just to see yourself neutrally and also honoring the mastery that you have without it meaning anything about you.
oh, you mean ego transcendence?
Yes. So essentially, when
Wow.
you've spent so much time, like, I think this was one of the biggest things that came out of Costa Rica for me. Claire and I just went and taught in Costa Rica, and Claire was there, and we were there for 7 days. And one of my biggest blocks has been feeling the feeling of like my medicine isn't mine to have.
Ooh, yeah.
Like the hardest thing that I've moved through is this mine? What gives me the authority to speak about this? Why on earth do I stand here, and should I have any idea about what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
And my teacher reflected back to me, because I've been on the mat religiously for every single day for the last 6 years. And
Yeah.
and I was like, it's mine to have. Like, this is mine to teach. I've worked so incredibly hard for this, and it
Mm.
is mine. And
Yeah.
coming into the ability of being like, this is mine, actually gives me more responsibility to show up as the mastery.
Yes.
Because when we don't claim that it's ours to have, we can use it as a mechanism of like, oh, well, I just won't then. It's not really mine, so I just won't do that. And like, da 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 da. But if you spend every single day of your life watering something, it
Mm.
is yours.
Yes. Yes. And I really touch on that last point because with mastery, with practice, with accumulation of understanding comes responsibility.
Yes.
And I'm not going to respond. I'm not going to confuse responsibility with power, but there is an element of power that comes and responsibility ultimately. Can you share a little bit more? I know you have a really strong viewpoint on responsibility, so I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
Yes. So with great power comes great responsibility. What
Mm,
is power? People see power as like influence or authority, but it's actually not that at all. It's your relationship with the divine and you being responsible and willing to show up as the divine.
mm,
And as we build our relationship with the divine, it becomes you, but it isn't you, but you are the character of showing up as that. What is divinity? Divinity is you being willing to show up in your humanity and your grace, and also consistently moving closer and closer to showing up as integral as possible. What is integrity? Integrity is you showing up in alignment with your own values, but not just your own values, what we know as the highest possible outcome. How do we know what the highest possible outcome is? Because of intuition, because of our higher self constantly reflecting to us, this is off, this is not, this is off, this is off. We know. So it's our willingness to show up as the divine, like highest possible outcome that's being asked of us. It's not like, oh, it's my value that I respond to somebody within 24 hours. That's
mhm.
not like that's like between me and you if we decide that, right? But
Yeah.
it's not like the highest possible outcome. The highest possible outcome might be that I acknowledge it. You know?
Yes.
Do you see what I'm saying? Using for
Yes.
example, but see what I'm saying. So
Yes.
the responsibility is acknowledging your divinity and then continuously like chiseling at a stone and carving yourself to be the divine thing that you are,
Mm,
saying, I will consistently choose the highest possible outcome, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's hard.
mm,
And that is really what mastery is, right? It's like
mhm.
watering your plant of divinity and letting that come through you over and over and over again, and then being willing to be that out in the world. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that we don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that we don't get triggered. It doesn't mean that we might have moments of like confusion and where we don't know, but we are constantly coming back to that thing.
Mhm.
And I think one of the most dangerous things that's happening at this time is that everyone wants to be a coach and not
Yeah.
enough people are watering their plants. Everyone
Mm,
wants to have great branding. Everybody wants to like talk about polarity or manifesting your dream life overnight or quantum fields, but they're not actually watering the plant of what it means to be the thing.
yeah.
And that is what responsibility is if you're going to share something, make sure that you're doing it,
Mm.
you know?
It's be the embodiment, right? It's actually
Yes.
embody the thing, be in the thing, do the thing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's absolutely
Totally.
true. Yeah.
Totally.
Oh, so much in there. And I was just thinking about how beautiful that is because regardless of what your modality is, your faith, your chosen pathway to be in divinity, regardless, we are all really allowing that divinity to move through us and be of service. And we're taking responsibility, aren't we? So regardless of whether you're Christian, Muslim, whether you're, non-religious, whether you worship the goddess, whether you worship the feminine, they're all ultimately a part of God moving through us in a language that is divine and intended for us that we can understand in this vessel. And we're ultimately transmuting it to be a medicine to others. And I think with all of this divide that we're experiencing in the world, in the collective, religious war, infighting, there's so much kind of importance to remember that actually these are just different flavors of the same thing that are coming through. It's the same request for us to take responsibility, for us to be of service to our highest version of ourselves. The fact that we're receiving it in a different language or a different way of transmission is almost pointless. Yeah, like it almost doesn't matter. And I just find that so fascinating. That's what dropped in for me anyway.
Well, I think that's also one of the, I don't want to use the word issue, but to me, I'm like, I want to go straight to source, like literally straight to source,
Yes.
but like want to go straight to the thing. If you are for like religion is beautiful. This is
Yeah.
not what I'm touching on. What I'm touching on is also the infiltration and distortion that can happen when we
Mm.
aren't going directly to source. And I
Yes.
think that's kind of, you know, I can't speak for all religions, but I will speak on what I observe within Christianity. They took something and they totally distorted it.
Yes.
You know, they wrote a book that wasn't actually a book for them to write about, to
Mm.
infiltrate, to gain deeper sense of control. And I think like it's all the same thread, but something's come in front of where we have access to source,
Hmm.
something's come in there and
Yeah.
I'm here and I'm going straight to the thing. And
Yeah.
this is kind of where religion is.
Yeah. I agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I really understand what you're saying around that distortion. Beautiful. So I'm just thinking we're sort of moving into, I guess, the last 10 minutes or so. So I'm curious. I would love to know a little bit more about your offerings and how people can work with you and what's lighting you up right now. You know, what you've got in store for people, how they can find you, all of these pieces.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that's lighting me up right now is really there's a couple of things that I feel really, really passionate about. One is guiding women to really become embodiments of this work. So,
Mm,
really taking people on a deep journey to embody exactly what it is that they want to share in the world. I feel really, really passionate about integrity and upholding the embodiment and that there can be a lot of mismatch of the depth of embodiment that's embodied to how we show up on the online space.
yeah.
So my deepest passion is guiding people into their unique medicine and like really
Yeah.
harvesting that feels really playful and fun for me where I'm like this is like what I see for you and I just want to bring that out and have more of that and also really guiding people to be deep embodiments of this work that want to be facilitators of this work that feel like their path is to teach this work and how can we really get you embodied in being the thing.
Mm,
So that's what really lights me up and that's what I really love doing and I feel like
mm.
it's one of my gifts to be able to see people's gifts and
It
see people's
really is. Yeah.
unique
Yeah.
medicines. So I have multiple pathways. You can come and spend time with us in Bali in January, and
Mhm.
we'll be doing a 7-day experience. And that's really for all levels. It's like you have
Mm.
mastery, you're right at the beginning of your path, you teach this work, maybe you don't, like it doesn't really matter. It's a pressure cooker for whatever level you're at. And then you can work online with me as well. I have kind of foundational work, which is coming in as a membership portal called Cultivate, which is where you can come in and learn the foundations of accessing your erotic aliveness, your body, tapping into your sensuality, just a practice space for you to kind of learn to come and feel yourself and feel the magnificence that's inside of you. So
Yeah.
that's kind of again, it can be for those of mastery, Claire's in there. It can also be for
Mhm.
those that have never done any of this work before that just want to come in. And then I do online containers. The upcoming one that I have is Queen at the moment, which is yeah, the path of responsibility. It's the path of service. It's the path of truth. It's the path of creation. It's for leaders. It's for creators that have visions and that want support in creating business doing what it doesn't have to be in my field, it can be in any field, but they want to sharpen their sword essentially.
Mm.
Yeah, and then I have a path behind the scenes called the path of the devotee, which is something that I feel really excited about, and it just feels like it feels like a deeply transformative path where I can take people deep into their essence and into their
Mm.
core to then be
Mm.
able to share this work. So, yeah, I guess my work ranges, but it's definitely very deep. It's very activating. It's deeply transformational, whatever level you're at. And I kind of just like work with people on the level that they want to work with me at. Like,
Yeah.
if you are new to this work, I'm not going to come in there and be like, this is your medicine. Like, let's do, I just want to work with people where they want to be worked at,
Yeah.
and we'll go on that journey together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things I admire about you is your ability to ultimately always see people in their power
Yes.
and to invite everybody into their power. And yeah, you're quite a unique, you're amongst a select group of teachers that I've had where I've really truly felt that level of integrity that
Mm.
is required in these teaching spaces in
Yes.
order to know that I can really go there and I can really allow myself to open. I can share my shadows with you. I can allow myself to be vulnerable, and you will help me find a way through.
Mm.
And I can transform under your guidance. So it has been deeply nourishing to. I think what's it been about a year and a half now? We've been journeying together. So I think it's been deeply nourishing for me to be under your tuition, under your guidance.
Mm.
You personally, a lot like you, I was, in that coaching space and like wanted to do the thing. And I was looking at all the accreditations and I was thinking, but I don't want to be Tony Robbins.
Yes.
That's not for me. And Tony
Mm.
Robbins is great and he helps so many and it's amazing, but that's not my flavor. And then experiencing the pressure cooker and having you as the main, yeah, mentor, teacher that was
Pressury.
needed, the pressurer that was, and I was the pressuree for sure. But it was deeply transformative and experiencing your medicine in person was wow. Yeah, it literally catapulted me into this is the thing. And when you just know, as you did, oh, this is the thing, I understood. I think I'm going to talk about the conversation that we had when we were outside. It was in Glastonbury. We were outside. It was a lunch break or something, and we were just having a little chat, just you and I. And I just said, I need to know, like, what's my gift? What's my special gift? And you just kind of looked at me straight in the eyes and you kind of smiled. And in the least condescending way, you just were like, you're the gift. You're the thing. Like it's you, Claire. And there's this way that you have of just penetrating and speaking truth into people's lives.
Mm.
And from that moment, I thought, yeah, I actually am, aren't I? Like it was like a veil had been lifted. Um, and yeah, I just thought I have to take responsibility for this thing. And every step of the way, that's what you've encouraged me to do. And I'm doing the thing, it's like all these years I've been holding back the thing and now I'm doing the thing. So I want to check in with some gratitude to you and yeah, just say thank you for your guidance, the one-to-one work we've done, the containers that we've done. I've journeyed Queen, it's huge. If anybody is looking to move into self ownership, into understanding how to build their realm, Queen is a wonderful vessel, a container in which to find your thing and be the thing and do the thing. And I know you've moved that to being a year's container from I think we had 4 months. So these are really ongoing safe spaces for you to be held and carried through transformation.
I think that's such an important thing as well. I think there's so many, like, 4-week courses and things like that, which
Hmm.
is so powerful for activation. And also, it's where we start.
Yes.
And my passion is, first off, like, I have a deep desire to work with people where I can be a part of their journey, because my biggest gift, I've been with my teacher for nearly 4 years now, and she just knows all my patterns and she knows my nervous system, and it's like she's just like gets in there straight away and she's like, you're doing that thing, and I'm like, oh yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
because she just knows me, she's been with me for so long. And it does take that relationship of building so that you can really, first off, like, it takes years to embody this work.
Mm.
years
Yes.
for it to actually be in your nervous system. You are rewriting all of the imprints of distortion and chaos and trauma and all of those things that are sitting in our nervous system, that are all
Yeah.
of our patterns and the weird things that we do. And
Mm.
we're learning another way of not overriding that, but clearing something else and creating a new imprint, which
Mhm.
requires you to show up every day to have that imprint.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it takes years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, so I guess how do we want to wrap things up? How I guess what I would like to do is I would like to ask you what would be your kind of takeaway invitation to those who are about to embark upon or want to be in service to transformation? What would be your advice to these individuals?
As in somebody that wants to facilitate or somebody that just wants to
Let's
go through the
let's
journey?
let's do for somebody who's embarking upon a journey of healing and then somebody who wants to facilitate.
Yeah, so I think if you're embarking on a journey of healing, my biggest piece of advice is go slow. I feel like
Mm,
we so want to rush this and we just want to get it out the way. And you see it all the time. People start healing and then all of a sudden they're doing like a Kundalini awakening course and then they're sitting ayahuasca. And it's like this like desire just to get it out of the way. And
mm,
unfortunately, our nervous systems just don't work like that. Like the body is so slow. So, my deepest advice would just be to surrender the speed that you want to go at and go slow, of just
mhm.
like seeing it as this thing that becomes part of your life, that you might not heal some of the things that you've come in with in this lifetime, unfortunately, and just being okay with that.
Amazing.
Yes.
Thank you. And for those that want to facilitate,
Yeah, my deepest request for those that want to facilitate is do your work.
very clear.
Yeah.
Do your work.
Do
Love
your
it.
work, become the embodiment, and just,
Mhm.
yeah, spend time on the mat.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Melody.
My
I'm
pleasure.
grateful. It's been really, really fun to speak to you and lots to learn. So, yeah, thank you. Love you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Love you too. Thank you.
Thank you.